So initially I was planning on just continuing through the prayer that we started on, the confession prayer. But then today, after Venable's talk, so many venerables here, my goodness. At our table, we were talking about Vinaya, and I remembered that Venerable Damcha had passed me a list of questions, and said, oh, it'd be very good if you answered these questions during EML because they have to do with Vinaya and so forth. The questions were from a Jewish well, she's not a rabbi. She is a Jewish learned person, who is not allowed to be a rabbi because she's a woman. In the Reform and conservative branches of Judaism in America, now women can ordain. When I was a kid, they couldn't. Now they can. But in the Orthodox, whoa, no way. The gender roles are very, very specific in the Orthodox community. Anyway, so she wanted to be able to function as a rabbi, and what we're finding many times is that what the women clergy in other traditions, we meet with them and we talk with them, and we all have kind of similar stories going on. So she was quite curious about, our tradition and so on. Did she go to the Sakyadhita conference? Do you know? Marcia, Mormon. Yeah, because I put her in touch with Shakyadita, because she really wanted support from other women, So she had asked some questions that we had never gotten to when she came and visited. So I thought after our discussion today that I would get to those questions. Now, some of the men may think, oh, yeah, it's about the Bhikshuni ordination. It's the women's thing, and they're going to tell us how much they've been persecuted. Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah, and then on top of that, they're going to boss us around. Yeah. So it's not that. I'm going to talk. She asked some, personal questions to me about my thoughts on different things and how I was going to steer the Abbey. And this pertains to both the monks and the nuns here. Because we are acting as we are, not just acting as, we are one community. We have a monk's order and a Bhikshuni order. And the idea of gender equality isn't just a woman's notion. It's a thing. It's got to be a men's notion too. We let you carry all the heavy things. You like that in the forest, don't you? Yeah. Oh, you'd be so mad at me if I went and pushed down those big things and took it away from him. Yeah. So it's important that we're aware of this and that we talk about it and that we're all on one page as a community. And if people have different opinions, of course, we can discuss that. But as you know, at the end, I'm right and you're wrong. Okay, so just remember that. Yeah. Yeah. The problem is that you're all thinking the same thing too. Yeah. Except your eye is a different eye than my eye is. Yeah, we'll have to see what Shantideva says about that. I don't think he'll like it. Okay, so let's do our visualization and take refuge and generate bodhicitta, and then, I'll read some of the questions and share some of my ideas. And let's cultivate our motivation. So we are often talking about all sentient beings, and we want to become fully awakened in order to benefit all sentient beings. Take a minute or two and reflect on what all sentient beings means, especially the word all. So nowadays in America, with the spread of identity politics and identity everything, we so often hear people say, I want to be with other people who look like me. Or when I go to this place, I don't see anybody who looks like me. And people get quite upset about this, because they're holding very strongly to physical characteristics that have to do with, race or ethnicity or gender or, who knows what. And thinking, oh, I can only communicate, or I can communicate better with people who are like me. So the like me tends to be so often based on very external parts of an individual, even the language they speak, or how how able they are, or what sports they play. But in Buddhism, we talk about all sentient beings, and all doesn't mean all of them who look like me. the Buddha really meant all, excluding none. And that was also the idea, I think, of the founding fathers, who said all men are created equal. They weren't thinking of half of the world's population. At the beginning of the Republic, all men created equal meant literally men, white, Anglo-Saxon background, Protestant, wealthy, and landowners. So they were actually a minority in the country, that group of people. And everyone else was not included in all men. But somewhere in their minds, they had a very expansive idea that the country, in fits and starts and forward steps and backward steps, is still trying to make a reality. So if we're Buddhists, and we talk about all sentient beings, we really have to keep expanding our mind more and more and more. Friends, enemies, strangers, not just human beings, but even the tiny gnats that we find in our room. Any being with a mind who's not yet a Buddha. So simply training our mind in the meaning of all sentient beings is quite an endeavor. And then when we say in the four immeasurables, may they all have happiness in its causes, be free of suffering from its causes, and so on. To really have that mind that includes everybody, and not just vague everybody's, but every individual. So try and have that expansive mind and really wish for all of these beings to have happiness in its causes, be free of suffering in its causes. And then devote your life to following the path so that you can make that happen as best as you can. And so that's our motivation. So all doesn't mean everybody is nice to me and who agrees with my ideas and does what I want. Doesn't mean that. But it means everybody who's exactly like us in wanting happiness and not pain. Okay, so Marcia wrote 10 questions. We'll just see where we go with it. So the first one, why did you decide to travel to Taiwan for the Bhikshuni ordination in 1987? So, and part of that question is, why did you feel this ordination was important to your development, since it was such a radical move at that time? Okay, why did I decide to go? When I first ordained, I didn't know a lot about the different levels of ordination. And, I knew that the men we always let them go in the door first. But I didn't really understand why, or I was just trying to get my feet and understand what Tibetan Buddhism was about, not all this outside stuff. But then I remember somebody once asked Lama and said, "Oh, we hear that the women also have, the monks here have bhikshu ordination. There also exists bhikshuni ordination. Can we take it?" And the Lama said, they don't have the lineage. And anyway, you have the bodhisattva vows. Many of you have the tantric vows. So bhikshuni is a lesser type of vow in comparison to those. So it's not, you don't really need to take it. And we just kind of accepted that. But the more we thought about it, it's like, well, if it's not important for us to take it, why is it important for the men to take it? Because it was clearly important for the guys to take that. That was not an issue. So I was also friends with Venerable Karma Lekshe Somo, and she had gone to Korea and also to Taiwan to take the Bhikshuni ordination. And so she really told me about it and encouraged me to do it, and said that she knows somebody in Taiwan who would help, and so on. And so after a while and really thinking about it, I thought, oh yeah, that would be good to do. Because I treasured precepts. I think precepts really help me get my life in order. Yeah. And clarify my actions and my attitudes and all. And I thought, oh, having more precepts would be really good. When they did Sojung in Dharamsala, because the nuns were Shramaneris and the little boys were all Shramaneras, and then we would have to go into the Sojung that the bhikshus were doing at the same time. So you had the grown women and the little boys rushing into the main temple at the same time, tripping over each other, trying to find a monk who would, because we had to go 3 by 3 and do that. And yeah, I did that, but it was so strange doing it with all the little boys, because we were grown-ups. Anyway, we would do that. We would come out after, doing that part. And everybody else, all the nuns and the little boys dispersed. But I just had this very strong feeling for I wanted to take higher ordination. And so I would circumambulate the main temple while the bhikshus were finishing their sojung. Because I knew that was something auspicious to do. And I would make very strong prayers to be able to take Bhikshuni ordination. So at some point, Venerable Lekshe told me that there was an ordination coming up in Taiwan. Yeah, I hadn't been to Taiwan before. This was also before I had gone to Singapore. Yeah, so I thought, okay, yeah, I want to go. I could have gone back to France at that moment and continued studying with Geshe Chekchok. But I thought, and I really wanted to do that. I loved studying with him. But I thought, if I go to France now, I'm in India, if I go back to France, I'll never make it to Taiwan because I don't have any money to travel. Yeah. So I thought this is going to be the only chance for me to go, because from Taiwan I was in Hong Kong actually. I had gotten sent to Hong Kong after India, I got sent to Hong Kong to help with the beginnings of a center there. So I knew from Hong Kong to Taiwan, somehow I would get the money to do that. So Venerable Lekshe was friends with Venerable Hengqing. So she called up Venerable Hengqing. When you go in the Kuan Yin room, the pictures of the two bhikshuni, she's the one on the left. Okay, so I have no idea who Venerable Hengqing is. I've never met her before. I don't know anybody in Taiwan. I got in a plane, got off at Taipei. There's a nun waiting there to pick me up, and she takes me back to her flat because she has to outfit me for the occasion, because I'm going to be in a Chinese temple, and and in those days there were hardly any Western nuns going for ordination. So I was going to wear Chinese robes and do the whole thing. So I just remember going into her flat, and I needed to go to the bathroom, but you had to take off your shoes before going into the flat. Then you had to take off those slippers and put on other slippers before going to the bathroom. Then you come out of the bathroom, you have to change slippers again. I'm saying, okay, I better remember this. Anyway, she got me fitted in the pajamas and the whole 9 yards, okay, and put me on a bus to go to Kaohsiung, okay. So, and she told the bus driver to say when we got to Kaohsiung, because I wouldn't know when. Anyway, I managed to get there. Bus driver told me when to get off. I got off. There was, thank goodness, a laywoman from the temple who was meeting me and was going to take me back to the temple. And this was quite a large temple. It was up against one of the mountains in Kaohsiung. And she sat me down and she said, "What's your Chinese name?" And I said, "I don't have one." I have a Tibetan name. And she said, "Okay, well, wait here. I'll go ask the master or somebody and get a Chinese name for you." So I said, okay. So I'm sitting there. So in my ordination, there were over 500 people. Most of them were nuns, and then some monks, because in Taiwan, the nuns vastly outnumber the monks. And so all sorts of people are walking by saying, "Amitofo, Amitofo," you know how it is. And I'm sitting there, okay, and then this nun comes back, because all the people coming and talking to me, I had never been around Chinese monastics, and they all kind of look alike, in the same way that we look alike when people come here. Yeah, people confuse me with Venerable Semke. Yeah. But, we're roughly the same height, but we don't think we look alike. But other people who are not used to people like us, then we look alike. Anyway, so she says, do you have did they come and give you your Chinese name? And I said, I think so. A lot of people were coming by and saying, Amitofo. Yeah. So I won't tell you the whole story of my ordination because there's still more questions to come. But, why did I feel that it was important to my development, since it was a radical move at the time? Well, because the Buddha set up those precepts, and I knew from taking the Shramaneri precepts how much it benefited me, and I thought this will benefit me more in my practice to become more disciplined. Yeah. Yeah, and it was a radical move at the time because, like I said, there were very few Western women who went, and women from some Tibetan nuns. There had been 4 nuns from the Tilakpur nunnery who had gone some years back, and that was kind of it. Yeah. So anyway, an important part. You're always supposed to ask your teacher's permission before you ordain, And so I kind of knew that Lama Zopa was not going to agree, okay? But at that time, His Holiness was talking a lot about the need to restore the Bhikshuni ordination lineage in Tibet. Now he's not talking about it much, but at that time he talked about it a lot. And so I thought, I'm going to ask His Holiness, So there was he would do these public blessings where, this was before he won the Nobel Peace Prize, so wasn't as crowded. But everybody could go up and just offer a kata, and then he would touch your head and give you a ribbon or something. And so, he would do like a lot of people at one time like this. So I went to one of those, and when it was my turn, I said, please, I would like to take Bhikshuni ordination in Taiwan. Do I have your blessings to do that? And he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, yes, of course, I'll pray. 5 words. And I knew that once he said those 5 words, nobody in the Tibetan community was going to. Yeah. Okay, so I went to Taiwan. Came back to the Tibetan community in Dharamsala, and I came back very quietly because there had been 2 Western nuns who had gone to Taiwan, somewhere, and I think it was Taiwan, and received Bhikshuni ordination. But they came back to Dharamsala. They were wearing Chinese robes, and they were going around telling everybody they were Bhikshunis, and the Tibetans did not like that at all. Okay, so I came back, I'm wearing my Tibetan robes. I just keep quiet about it, except to my teachers and a few friends. And that was wise to do that. Okay. Then, were you encouraged or discouraged from doing it? Well, from certain people, I was encouraged, like His Holiness and Venerable Lekshe, and certain people I was discouraged, like, the ordination lineage doesn't exist, and you have everything here in Tibetan Buddhism, and so on and so forth, okay? But I knew what I wanted to do, and so I did it. And I've learned, it's good not to blabber too much about what you're going to do. Yeah, especially when you don't know how other people are going to take it, because it could, people could, yeah. Anyway, so question 3. Since you were not ordained in my Bhikshuni ordination, you were not ordained as a Bhikshuni in the Mula Sravastivada Vinaya, which is the one practiced by the Tibetans, do you consider yourself to be part of the Tibetan ordination tradition as it exists today in Tibet and in Tibetan communities in exile? Okay, the way I consider myself is in terms of Sutra Tantra study. I follow the Tibetan tradition. In terms of Vinaya, I follow the Dharmaguptaka because that was the lineage of my Bhikshuni ordination. Okay, so I consider myself, like that. One part in terms of my basic practice, I follow the Tibetans because I haven't found anything better than Tsongkhapa. Yeah, I'm prejudiced, I will admit it. Yeah, I haven't found anything better than that. Okay, in terms of Vinaya, I'm Dharmaguptaka. Also, so it's not just, because I ordained in Taiwan, but it was also how I was welcomed. Yeah, the Chinese they were so happy to have us come. They didn't know what to do with us. In my ordination, like I said, there were about 500 people. There were 2 Westerners, that was all. Me and another American woman who was the age of my mother. Yeah, and they, we asked for translation. They had never had people that needed translation into English. Yeah. So it took 2 weeks for them to give permission for somebody to translate for us formally during the trainings and all. Yeah. And the translator wasn't very good because in those days there weren't very many people in Taiwan who knew English. And now it's not like, in Singapore, almost everybody knows English. In Taiwan, no, that's not the case at all. Okay, so that's how I consider myself. That's how I consider the Abbey. Tibetan lamas come here and they see a group of Westerners who are harmonious, who aren't clobbering each other and arguing, and who are genuinely interested in the Dharma. And so, from the Tibetans that have come here, it's fine. With the lamas that we invite to come and teach us, it's fine. There's no problem. And we've invited Venerable Hengqing and Venerable Wu Yin to come and teach us the Vinaya part. Yeah, again, no problem. And I think that's because we're in the West. For the Tibetans, okay, this is just my opinion, okay? It seems like in the Tibetan mind, especially the older generation, who are really trying very hard to preserve their tradition in the face of being exiled. The Westerners, they're happy to ordain us, but they don't support us. They don't, we aren't really, when I ordained, there was no Tibetan place for me to go and live. At Kopan, they had a place for Westerners, and Lama and Rinpoche, supported our ordination. But, in general, the feeling, and still now, is that the Ingis, the Westerners, they're not real Tibetan Buddhists. Yeah. Do you have, in your experience, have you gotten that feeling too, or? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so happy to ordain us, happy for us to make offerings, happy for us to write letters to benefactors for them. But we're not part of their institution. And at the beginning, I really didn't feel it felt funny, It's like, well, wait, I'm ordained, I follow this, but no, you're not kind of part. But nobody ever said that. It was just the feeling you got. So, that was kind of painful at some point. But then, now when I look at it, I think that's what I'm very thankful for it, because that's what allowed the Abbey to be created. Yeah, if we had been part of the Tibetan Buddhist institution, before setting this up, I would have had to get permission from the Department of Religion and Culture, and permission from this and that, and I would, it wouldn't have happened, okay? And also, it's kind of radical, at least because I was mostly with the FPMT in early years. It was always Tibetan Geshes who were at the head of the Dharma centers and who made the main decisions and so on. And so for an Inji and a nun, because the Tibetan nuns, when I went to India, they were so shy. There was no Geshe education for them at that time. So they mostly did chanting and, had when His Holiness taught in public. They went, they got some teachings, but no, the education for the monks and the nuns, not the same at all, okay? The nuns didn't have the Bhikshuni ordination. They were not well respected. And they were all very quiet and sweet and polite. And always when they went into a situation, they always headed for the back row without question, because that's where they knew they belonged. And if you suggested that there was some space a little closer, they wouldn't even go. Because if, as nuns, they were seen sitting closer, not in the back where they belonged, they would have been criticized. Okay, so I tried to be sweet and quiet and like that. Yeah. How do you think that worked? You guys know me. Yeah. It didn't work. Yeah. So I had to accept who I was. Yeah. And that's it. Okay. I tried to be sweet. But, when I had questions, I would ask my questions. And I would follow up, and I'd go see my teachers and ask them more questions. So, I tried. Didn't work. Okay. So that was in terms of how I feel about what tradition I'm in. And by extension, kind of what tradition the Abbey's in. Yeah, we follow both. So another thing I wanted to emphasize, so the Tibetans, we weren't part of their institution. Yeah, the Chinese, when you go in, they're having pictures taken. Oh, come be in the photos with us. Yeah, I remember when I first met Venerable Wuyan, it was 1994 or 5, and I went to Taiwan to invite her to come to Bodh Gaya to teach the Life as a Western Buddhist Nun conference. And something was happening on the day I arrived. Some people were graduating, or I don't know what was happening. Anyway, they were taking pictures of everybody there, and I'm a stranger. She doesn't know me. I mean, she knew I was coming. Venerable Jendi had arranged it, but she said, "Oh no, come here, sit here. I'm in the picture. I'm put with all the other nuns." Just immediately included. Yeah. And it was such a new experience for me. And I've just found repeatedly that the Chinese monastics they're very inclusive this way. Even in the Vinaya, I think they have, well, they used to have 5 Vinaya traditions translated into Chinese. And then I think in the last few decades, they added a 6th one, the Pali. Yeah. So they have a plethora of Chinese, and they follow mostly Dharmaguptaka, but they'll refer to the other Vinayas. Yeah, the Tibetans, it is Mula Sravastivada, and that's it. Okay, and so that's one of the difficulties about trying to help the Tibetan nuns become bhikshunis, is because the Tibetans and the Chinese have different Vinaya traditions. Okay. In any case, I mean, they were just amazing. They didn't know me, but they'd take you in. And then just jumping ahead, I forget what year it was, a few years ago, they were having some kind of awards ceremony for bhikshunis. And so Venerable Ananda Bodhi from the Thai forest tradition, both she and I were invited to that. And we've been friends for a while. And so it was so strange. They had this whole award ceremony for the bhikshunis in a stadium, a huge stadium that was full. Okay. The main program was giving awards to these bhikshunis that they had selected. And in between the awards, they had entertainment. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was really something. Anyway, I won't go into detail about the entertainment, but there were lions and bears, people dressed in these big costumes, kind of like Disneyland, and they're dancing around, and it wound up to be something on Taiwanese TV, some big, show that everybody loved. Yeah. And so they give an award to a bhikshuni, and then, we're doing this. But anyway, when Venerable Nanda Bodhi and I, when we walked in, just at the beginning, the lay people were all lined up, and they're clapping, and they're so happy to see us. And she's from Theravada, and and they're also women, under the table, kind of, So she and I are looking at each other like, what's happening here? The lay people they're applauding nuns. We've never had anything like that happen to us. That's always the realm of the monks. And then they gave awards, and yeah, it was, she and I were like, what's going on? We just couldn't figure it out. Anyway, that what I'm saying is how much we were welcomed. Yeah. Okay, then the 4th question. In your own Vinaya stream, that is, or tradition that is propagated at the Abbey, do the vows contain the 8 heavy rules for women? Okay, so at there's one of the chapters in the Vinaya is called the Bhikshuni Vibhanka, and it tells the history of the origin of the Bhikshuni order. And it's one of those things, when you talk to people who have done historical research about the development of the Sangha, there are certain parts of the Vinaya that they're not sure. These are the historians, okay, the academics, who are not sure if these things were actually said by the Buddha or if they were things that developed in the tradition later on. Okay, the people who are Buddhists, by and large, say it's in the text, it happened. Yeah. But one of these things that where we find there's differences is in, one is the Shikshamana precepts for nuns. Yeah, some Vinaya traditions say that there's 6 main precepts. That's what you people have, those 6, yeah. Some people say, some traditions say there's 12 precepts, and the Mula Travastavada say there's 18. Okay, so there's difference in that, and so that's what makes people say, oh, did the Buddha actually say that? How come the Shikshamana precepts were mentioned? Because there weren't any Shikshamanas at that time. There weren't any bhikshunis. This was one of the preconditions that the Buddha allegedly gave to Mahaprajapati when she requested, ordination for the women, that thereafter they had to take Shikshamana ordination. So there, if you look at it historically, you don't know, Anyway, so that's one of the things. The other is the 8 heavy rules, okay? So in the Vinaya also, in the Bhikshuni Vibhanka, it talks about one of the reasons that, when the Buddha gave Mahaprajapati, who was his stepmother, permission to ordain and to start the Bhikshuni order, he gave 8 very heavy rules that the nuns had to obey, okay? And all of these rules put the monks in charge and made very clear that the monks had higher, the monks were, because the monks' order had been founded 12 years before, they were kind of like the big brothers, and they were going to help the nuns. And so they taught the nuns, and there were precepts about when you saw, even if a nun who had been ordained 100 years met a newly ordained monk who had been ordained for 1 day, she should bow to him and offer him a place to sit and some refreshment. Okay, so many, these kind of rules, there were 8 of them. And so that's what Marcia was asking here. Do we hold those at the Abbey? Okay. Now, in the Chinese tradition, it's quite interesting. By and large, these are recited, but there is one main nun in Taipei. What's her name? Yeah, her name is what's her name? And as you know, I'm very bad with names. Anyway, she is Cao Wei. Okay, so Venerable Cao Wei, who said, no, we aren't following these. They're old-fashioned, and they're not applicable, and we're not following them. And so some people say, yeah, we're behind you, and some people say, you're degenerating the Dharma. Okay. Anyway, my feeling about those 8, a few of them have become pratismoksha precepts, but in the category of lapses. So they're not the main precept. They aren't the parajika and sanghavasesa, or even the forfeiture lapses. They're just regular lapses. That's still no excuse to, you don't just dismiss it and say, I don't like it. So it's false, the Buddha didn't write that, or, it's garbage or something like that. Okay, my view about that is I think we should respect everybody, whether they were, ordained before us or ordained after us, or whether they're a worm or a human being or whatever. We should respect all sentient beings. And also in terms of setting up the Abbey, my feeling is, we are Westerners and we have to do things in accord with our own culture. And putting women, in the back of the room and making them the cooks and cleaners, Buddhism is not going to spread in the West if we have that kind of image. Somebody once asked me, she said, if you went to a Buddhist temple and all the African Americans had to sit in the back of the room, would you go back to that place? I said, I don't think so. She said, well, then why do you go to places where the nuns have to sit in the back of the room? I don't have an answer for that, except that the teachers teach the Dharma and I want to learn the Dharma, and so I just don't pay attention to those things. And because in some temples, not all temples, but some temples, it's starting to change. Yeah, but not in all. Anyway, if part of our mission here at the Abbey is to help ground the Buddhist teachings in this culture, in this place, then just as Buddhism adapted to the culture and environment and history and traditions of all the other places it's spread to, then it should have to take those things in context, into consideration when it spreads to America. Okay, so we can see Tibetan robes and Chinese robes look different, and they look different from Theravada robes. They all have patches in the same way, but stitched on differently, different colors, different sizes. Okay, the style of the robes is very different. Everything had to be adjusted according to the culture. In Chinese culture, you don't show your arms like this, yeah? And only the emperor could wear this color. So they made all the robes gray, and everybody, the monks and nuns, wore sleeves. Yeah? So, we see, of course, these things have to change according to the culture. The food that you eat, what's offered on the altar. Some traditions have altars that are so full of stuff. Yeah, that's the Tibetans. And then some traditions have altars that are very plain and simple. That's Theravada. Okay? So, so it has to follow the culture of the place. So my feeling is, in the West, where gender equality is a big thing, even though it's not always practiced, it is a strong principle, then that is the way we are going to approach things here. Because if we start trying to replicate a Tibetan monastery, it's not going to work. Yeah. I don't think most of you would still be here. Yeah. I wouldn't even be here. Yeah. So, yeah. And also, the Buddha, what he wanted all sentient beings to become awakened. He didn't say, I just want human males to become awakened. He said, all sentient beings. So if we want to fulfill what the Buddha's purpose we have to take care of all sentient beings and make the Dharma available, to at least anybody who can understand it. And so it doesn't matter their race, it doesn't matter their gender, it doesn't matter, even Republicans, are welcome here, okay? It doesn't depend on those kinds of things, I'm just joking about the Republican part. Because my dream is, I would love to go to Congress, and have Trump sit in the room in the back and hear a Dharma talk. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine Ted Cruz? Yeah. And I mean, all these guys listening to just a talk about having compassion for all sentient beings. That would be revolutionary. Anyway, I'm going off my script. I don't have a script. So that's why I can go off it. Okay, but that's very much my feeling, why we're doing it. We're responding to the needs of the culture. Mm-hmm. Okay. In the conference in 2007, this was a conference held in Hamburg, Germany. Venerable Thubten Chodron was one of the main organizers. And she, at this time there was a lot of discussion in the Tibetan community about bringing the bhikshuni ordination in. And she was very hopeful that at this conference, His Holiness would say, yes, we're doing it. But His Holiness had been talking, whenever he talked about bhikshuni ordination, he always, without a doubt, said, this is a decision for the Sangha. I am only one person. I'm not like the Pope. I can't make a decision for all of the Tibetans, let alone all of the Sangha of the different traditions. So he said, we have to have a conference and get the senior bhikshus together and talk to them about how this can be done. Okay, so that was his idea. So of course, he wasn't going to declare it at the conference in 2007. Okay, but she's saying in the conference in 2007, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that the Sangha must decide the fate of ordination of nuns. In 2016, there was another conference that still did not reach a conclusion on ordaining women in the Mula Sravastivada tradition. Where do you think this Sangha stands now? Okay, so they had started having the abbots and rinpoches come together of the different Tibetan Buddhist traditions, come together to discuss various issues that were important to all of them. And so they started just introducing the topic of bhikshuni ordination. And the monks couldn't come to a conclusion, okay? And the main thing is, this is two different Vinaya traditions, and it's not kosher to mix them, okay? My view, okay, with all respect to the tradition, is that the Buddha taught Vinaya. The Buddha did not say, I'm teaching Mula Sravastivada Vinaya, I'm teaching Dharmagupta Vinaya, I'm teaching Pali Vinaya, I'm teaching Mahasangika Vinaya. He just taught Vinaya. And the different Vinaya traditions developed because Buddha's disciples started going in different directions to spread the teachings. It was an oral tradition. Everything was repeated orally. It wasn't written down, or it didn't even start to be written down until the 1st century BC. And it took many centuries thereafter for everything to be written down. Okay, so of course you're going to come up with some differences. It's amazing how similar the precepts are in the different traditions, given that it was an oral tradition for centuries. Yeah. But the Tibetan monks say, we're Mula Sravastivada, they're Dharmaguptaka. It's different. It's different enumerations of the precepts. And then which ceremony we're going to use, the one from Mula Sravastivada, the one from Dharmaguptaka. When you look in the ceremonies, it's quite interesting because the ceremonies at the time of the Buddha were very simple. I mean, the first ceremony was come, O bhikshu, and you were ordained. Yeah. But then gradually over time, things developed in different circumstances. And then even over the centuries, in Tibet, they added different prayers and different things to the ordination ceremony. They did the same thing in China, the same thing in the Pali tradition. And the stuff they added was different, but the core, the Sangha karmans, when you state a motion, in this case, a motion to ordain somebody, and you ask it 3 times, and the Sangha remains silent, indicating that they agree. In all the traditions, that's the actual Sangha karman at the time when people get ordained. All the other stuff is things people have added later, because it's, when you're doing something important like that, it's nice to have other things going on that remind you of what you're doing and why you're doing, and so on. So those of you who've been through, even the shamanary, there's different chanting, there's different verses, there's things you do, you go here, you do there, go there. There's even more stuff for the full ordination in the Chinese tradition. The Tibetan tradition, there's some more too. In the Posada, the fortnightly confession, again, the Tibetans added some material, the Chinese added for theirs, but the basic thing you do in Posada is exactly the same. That has remained the same. But for the Tibetan monks, this is just a big obstacle. Yeah. Okay, so that's how they state it. Now, I'm going to give you some of things that are my opinions. I'm not saying they are the truth. They are my opinions. When you are a Tibetan refugee and you had to flee your land because of the Chinese invasion of your land, how happy are you going to be admitting that your tradition only has 3 of the 4 assemblies of Buddha's disciples, and going to the Chinese tradition to bring them and have them come and add the Bhikshuni Sangha to your tradition? Yeah. It would be very hard, I think, for many Tibetans, who pride themselves on their tradition, to say that, we don't have all 4 of the fourfold Sangha, lay men and lay women, and Bhikshu and Bhikshuni. Yeah, they don't. His Holiness once said, we don't have the full fourfold Sangha. But then after that, it became, we have bhikshus, and that just makes up for the lack of bhikshunis. So we do have the fourfold Sangha. Yeah. But you can understand from a cultural viewpoint, admitting that when you pride yourself in your tradition. And the Tibetans have absolutely an amazing tradition with teachings that you don't find so easily in the other traditions. Some of the teachings, the way emptiness is explained, the way the unity of serenity and insight is explained. So they've always prided themselves on and they have tantra, so they say we have the complete Buddhist traditions. Yeah, of course, the Chinese and the Tibetans say tantra isn't even Buddhism; it's corrupt Hinduism, so that doesn't count. But the Tibetans don't say that about their own tradition. Okay, so it's difficult for them to imagine, going to the Chinese tradition and taking something from them that they don't have, especially when they've been forced into exile because, of the communist Chinese invasion of Tibet. So there's that element in there. Yeah. I talked to one of my Tibetan friends who's a geshe who is close to His Holiness, and he said he thinks, how did he say it? That if the nuns were ordained, then there might be some competition for offerings and status and things like that. Okay, he said it, I didn't. Okay, but he knew. Yeah. So, so they used to have the bhikshuni ordination as part of their discussion when the abbots and rinpoches got together. And I don't think they do that now. And I don't know if they even continue to have those meetings. There was one scheduled a few years ago, and then a very high Nyingma Lama passed away. He had been here, you might remember, some years ago. Yeah, he was the one who was a monk. I forgot his name because I don't remember names. He was wonderful. Do you remember his name? What? Yeah, Ken just means abbot, but I forget his exact name. Anyway, so he had just passed away. Yeah, and so they canceled the meeting in that year, and I don't know if they've had subsequent meetings. Yeah, but nobody seems to talk about bhikshuni ordination now. Okay, then in the ecumenical approach, she has in quotation marks, if the ecumenical approach was taken of combining monks from the Mula Sravastivada tradition and nuns such as yourself to create a quorum to ordain a nun in the Mula Sravastivada tradition, would you take part? Okay, so one way that was suggested to bring the nuns' ordination into the Tibetan community was to have Mula Sravastivada monks and Dharmaguptaka nuns give the ordination together, because in the case of bhikshuni ordination, you have to have both a bhikshu sangha and a bhikshuni sangha give the ordination. Okay, so she's saying if that approach, was acceptable, would I participate in it? Okay. This brings up a whole thing because in the 2007 conference in Hamburg, it was very interesting that there were Tibetan nuns there, but none of them seemed very eager to take bhikshuni ordination. And subsequently, too, even the geshimas, they aren't very interested in it. Okay, why not? I think part of it, okay, is that they've been told by their teachers many times, like we were, but you have bodhisattva ethical restraints, you have the tantric ethical restraints. You have the Shramaneri precepts, you don't need to take Bhikshuni ordination. So I think they've been told that a lot. And then they've been told, because most of their teachers are monks, that you can't do it anyway because it's two different Vinaya traditions. So I think the Tibetan nuns have heard this so much, Oh, and another thing the monks tell them is that it's very, very difficult to keep the full precepts very well. You would be transgressing a lot of them. Yeah. To which some people say, and the monks? Okay. But so they don't seem very interested. His Holiness is now, and for the last, I don't know, quite a while, is really pushing the Geshe-ma tradition, because he said, I can't, as one individual, start the Bhikshuni ordination tradition in Tibet, but, the Geshe-ma isn't a Sangha affair, that's just among the teachers. And I think that we can start it. And so he told the Department of Religion and Culture, yes, we're going to have this, and we're going to have Geshe-ma degrees and certificates, and they will, the whole 9 yards. And so the women have started studying for that. And there are, I forget how many, almost 60, I think, Geshe-mas at present. And then more coming up each year. Okay, so would I participate? I would, because this would be introducing the ordination into the Tibetan tradition, and there has been until now a lot of pushback about not wanting to do it. I would ask His Holiness's permission, and only do it if he gave his permission, because I want to keep I have a very good relationship with him, and I want to keep that, and I'm not gonna, and I don't, I'm not a crusader, we're gonna, march on the big temple, demand that we have Bhikshuni ordination. That's not my style. Okay, but giving the Bhikshuni ordination in the Dharmaguptaka tradition, yes, that I can do, because I have ordination in that tradition. And, what we want to do here, well, that 3 years ago, I went and I was part of the Bhikshuni Sangha giving the ordination. And next year, I'm also going. They invited me to come and do that. So, and then we want to, at some point, give the Bhikshuni ordination and the Bhikshu ordination in English here. Yeah, and that would be something really remarkable, if we could do that in English. So that's, I'm putting my eggs in that basket. Yeah, because that, that would not create any conflict with anybody.
I know you like thinking long term.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's 20 years now or 50 years from now. But if we don't have the opportunity to ask your permission then, would you support in the future maybe Abbey monastics?
Now, what do you think? After everything I said, okay, do I need to tell you where to go pee?
Oh.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, of course. Of course, Of course, you follow the rules, to give the ordination. You have to be ordained, I think, 12 years. Yeah, in this tradition. And you need 10 people, and you follow the rules. Yeah, but yes, wouldn't that be remarkable? Yeah, so if you don't do it while I'm here, then you do it the day after I die. Well, you can take a break. Uh, okay.
Well, there was a video that was up that Geshe-la helped us translate, where His Holiness met the Geshe-mas, and he brought up the Bhikshuni ordination, and along the line of that, we don't have it in our tradition, but you have to get Getsu, and also now you have your studies, and you need to go and teach and benefit.
Yeah.
So he brought it up. As, like, no, it wasn't a question.
Yeah,
he just brought it up
I
in
saw the
context.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought it up, and I think what he was doing was really encouraging the nuns, because with the Geshe degree, in order to study the entire Vinaya, you have to have the full ordination. So the Geshe-mas do not have full ordination, so they cannot study the Geshe-mas cannot study the entire Vinaya, okay? The Tibetans actually don't study the Vinaya a lot to start with, okay? But anyway, what His Holiness was saying to them was, okay, even though that little portion you can't, of all of the Buddhist teachings, you can't study because you don't have the ordination, don't let that hold you back, because you can study everything else. Yeah. And he said, now you can go and get your Geshe degree, and you can teach, and the situation of the nuns is changing. Yeah, so, he just feels very strongly that as one person, he cannot change the tradition. Yeah. But it's very interesting because, when was it? Was it for the 2007 conference or sometime later? Because we had a few of us, we were the self-designated Bhikshuni Ordination Committee, okay, and we had a website and everything, and we put out a booklet about reviving it. Is that in our Dharma and things thing? It might be down there, and we asked the heads of many traditions to write an endorsement for that idea. And it's very interesting because some of the other Tibetan traditions, they're much more favorable. Part of that is that some of those traditions, the heads of those traditions are not monastics. So, so it's easier for them to okay something or to at least express their opinion. Yeah. But it was remarkable. The Galupas are really the ones that are most conservative in this tradition, in this respect. Yeah.
So, so if the Tibetan monks or the monastics, male monastics, are so resistant to, they think that women don't need the full ordination, so they don't think women can become enlightened?
I don't think they would say that out loud, because it's very clear in Tantra you can become enlightened with a woman's body. But, yeah, in Tibetan society, in general, women are not regarded as equal to the men. They don't really see that. If you say something like that to many Tibetans, they would say, no, the women are equal. And they will point to all the women who manage the stores in Dharamsala and who manage the money in the family. And they'll point to that. Yeah. But, okay, one of my friends a couple of years ago, he was at the IBD, the dialectic school, and he was starting and he wanted to study there. And the teacher of the class asked the whole class, do you think women are inferior to men? So my friend, who's an American male, yeah, so it was him and one Swiss nun who said, no, women are not inferior to men. The Tibetan men in the class all said, well, of course they are inferior, of course. That's just, I mean, this is not something unusual. This is every culture in the world. Yeah, so they're not going to be different. I mean, that's just, yeah. We're all familiar with that. Uh-huh.
I'd like to share with you, not today, but a book that Bhikkhu Analayo has written and done some comparative studies where he says the Pali Canon is one presentation where it sounds like the Buddha actually says, no, women cannot ordain. But he cites 2 Chinese passages where the Buddha doesn't say no, he says, wait, Gotami, you can shave your head, you can wear the ochre robes. And in effect, what he's saying is stay at home and live with your family, but you can be a bhikshuni.
You can act like a bhikshuni.
Well, and his assumptions, his idea is that at that time, if women were not under the protection of a father, a husband, or a son, they were considered prostitutes. And so why would he put that on the nuns, sending them out as wandering mendicants? So he put them under the bhikshus to protect them at that time when the culture, as you were saying, when the cultural attitudes were such that they could not stand on their own. But the cultures now in Western countries in particular are very different. So I'll share that with you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I wonder how are the nuns viewed in Taiwan, if there are more nuns than monks, and maybe in Chan Buddhism in general, or
The Taiwanese nuns are viewed with very high regard. Okay, in that awards ceremony I told you about, some of the most important monks in the country were the ones up there giving out the awards. And they were praising the Bhikshuni Sangha, and it's interesting, in the countries where bhikshunis exist, the women are better educated and more active in society than in the countries where there aren't bhikshunis. Yeah, and you really see that in Taiwan. I mean, they go and they build their own temples, and they have TV stations and radio stations, and these are the nuns, and they operate independently. They seem to get along fairly well with the monks. Yeah, they respect the monks when it's like in the Vinaya ordination time and everything like that. They respect the monks, and the monks always go first, and they run the ceremony, and so on and so forth. But aside from those times, because we were having lunch with the guides in the ordination time, and Tiger Mother, that was a nickname Venerable Semke and some others gave to, because you have these guides who are the ones who do a lot of the education during the ordination and really guides you through everything you're supposed to be doing. So Tiger Mother was the chief bhikshuni guide. And of course, in formal things, she was respectful to all the bhikshu guides. But when the head bhikshu guy, I don't know what he did. I didn't understand Chinese. Do you remember? Yeah. He wasn't strict enough. So we're sitting there in the dining room where they're all eating, because we weren't eating with all the candidates. And she just said, look, you blah, 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 blah. You got to shape up and do da, 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 da. And he listened. Okay, we didn't get through all the questions, so we will continue that. And we also have to finish this. Why are you laughing? You don't want to hear more about what you need to confess? Yeah, I do get through some things, don't I? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I restrained myself. I didn't tell you all the stories from my ordination. So that was quite restrained. Okay, let's dedicate. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And if I can ask, especially the people who are lay people, if you ever talk about this with other people, please refrain from saying, Thubten Chodron said, da 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 da, because it's very easy in a situation like this where how you use words are very important and things, there's a lot of nuances, yeah, that nobody goes out and says, well, Thubten Chodron said, just ignore the monks. We're going to go ahead and give the Bhikshuni ordination on our own, forget them. That's not what I said, okay? But people could sometimes hear a little bit of something and then, yeah, and then that just makes a lot of problems. Yeah, and this has happened before. I mean, just the other day, Venerable Sangha wrote to me and said, oh, somebody, I'm reading somebody's book to write an endorsement of it, and they say that you checked a part of it. Did you check it? And I said, I don't even know that guy. I didn't check it. Yeah, what it came out as one time he had asked Venerable Sangha a question. She had asked me, I had answered to her. I didn't know it was for him. And he put it in his book, and I don't know if he quoted me correctly or not. But she was thinking that I had checked the whole book. I didn't know what the guy was and who he was, and it was also just one small part. Okay, so we want to avoid that kind of thing that so easily can happen. My reputation. We've got to protect my reputation,